People don't lie with words, they lie with timing. People don't lie with words, people don't lie with words, they lie with timing. And if your character lies too cleanly, readers are going to notice it immediately, even if they don't know why. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Jack Lawrence, award-winning and best-selling mystery writer, former therapist. On this channel, we talk about psychology tips and tricks that bring life and depth to your characters and your story. So writers are taught to detect lying a lot differently than therapists are. Writers, it's more about shifting eyes, stammering, obvious nervousness. That's not always the case in a clinical setting. As somebody who's worked with addicts and people in incarceration, even private practice with families and couples, individuals, those signs are very unreliable. People can be nervous just because they're being asked questions about their lives. They can be nervous because they don't like to talk to people. They can be nervous because they're in a new setting. Not every culture, not every person is taught to look directly in somebody's eyes when they speak. That's more of a Western thing. So is your character part of that culture? Do they lack self-confidence? A general lack of self-confidence could cause somebody to look away when they're talking to somebody rather than looking them straight in the eye. So what therapists listen for, because that's more important sometimes than what you see, is there hesitation? Are they having to think about the response? If they have to think about it, it's probably not true. Most people, if they're recalling from memory, they think it's absolute truth. They take it for what it is, and however they remember it is how it happened to them. Generally, they don't need to recall it. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times it's going to be instantaneous. Over clarity. Are they over explaining the situation? If it's a simple question or something that doesn't need a whole diatribe and they go on and talk for 5 minutes about it, they're probably lying because they're trying to over explain and rationalize whatever it is that they're telling you. Changes in storytelling with them. If they start off upbeat and then it crashes, there's probably something going on there. It's probably something worth looking into. And the reason for this is that lying is going to interrupt mental flow. If you're telling a story, if you're talking to somebody, it's very natural, it's very flowy. It's just coming out. You're telling the story, you're answering the question, you're doing whatever. If there's a lot of interruptions, a lot of stopping to think and refocus, then they're trying to come up with an answer or a response that they think is going to give them the result that they want, which means that they're probably lying. So let's kind of narrow in on 3 of the most common ones. The over-explaining simple details, I talked about a little bit. Liars add unnecessary context for safety. They're going to add this information to add credibility to whatever they're telling you. Hopefully to derail you into picking up on the little things that aren't true. Skipping emotional context. And they explain what happened rather than how it felt. Which is why writing, showing is so much better than telling. Because it skips the whole context. And when you tell somebody something, it takes away a lot of the life of it. They correct themselves too carefully. If you make a mistake, most of the time it's a very quick thing, right? Oh, no, I made a mistake, etc., etc. It's a casual correction. You're not stopping to think about it. It's not deliberate. Whereas with a liar, it's going to be a very deliberate action of self-correction. So in writing, one of the best ways to correct it is not to make it boring. I see a lot of times in writing, I didn't do it, that wasn't me, right? Very bland, straight, obvious lie. Instead, add depth, right? if it's an interrogation or um, somebody is questioning a suspect, and they say, "Where were you the night of such and such?" Rather than saying, "Oh, I was at home," or "I was out with so and so," there's going to be a long explanation or over explanation. I got home at 7. The traffic was really awful. I remember because, and then the story goes on, and they have this long diatribe. So rather than think of it like this, rather than writing 3 or 4 words, it's 2 to 3 sentences, maybe a paragraph and a half of explanation. So in those two examples, you notice what was missing: an emotional response primarily. So in those two examples, I want you to kind of think for a moment what was missing. One was emotion. I got home at such and such. The traffic was really bad because there's nothing emotional there. It's too organized. It's very step by step. And then there's a reason they remember this. Right? There's an explanation for the explanation. Whereas the truth is very messy. It's oftentimes disorganized, right? You're trying to remember, oh, yeah, I was driving home at this time, and I think it took me a little bit longer to get home. And then once I got home, I started dinner, I think. Things like that, rather than I left work at this time, traffic was bad because of this. When I got home, I did X, Y, Z, and by this time, I was in bed. Another huge mistake I see writers make is that they expose a lie way too quickly. It's almost immediate. Let the reader kind of sense that the person is lying first, right? Add a little detail that's not quite what they said the first time, or an over explanation, or not able to keep eye contact. Little things sprinkled throughout, because the reader is going to pick up on that and they're going to sense it long before you have to reveal it. And that's going to draw them into the story. It's going to make them invested. It gives that sense of, I'm helping solve this thing, right? Whether that's romance, mystery, thriller, you can incorporate that in any genre of book, to where now the reader is part of this investigation, or part of figuring out what this person is lying about, why they're lying, what are they trying to protect. And suspicion is a lot more powerful than confirmation. You could even use this to draw the reader in to suspect one person, while the other person, the actual villain or the bad guy, is kind of in the background. Maybe they're partly suspected, but not as much as this person, because of the way this person is lying. But if you do that, you have to remember, why is this person lying? What is their motivation? What is it that they're protecting themselves from? Maybe it's, if the truth about this comes out, it reveals this about them, if that makes sense. So if you found this useful, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. So every week you can get psychological tips and systemic therapy models to. So if you found this useful, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. So every week you can get psychology tips to improve depth. So if you found this useful, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. So every week you can get psychology tips to bring life and depth to your characters